Hello, I'm Marguerite Picard, welcoming you to another of our MELCA videos about providing interdisciplinary support for couples and families who are going through separation. Today, we're going to have a panel discussion with three of our expert family consultants. Sometimes they're known as a mental health professional. The people we're going to be speaking to today are Illana Katz, Sandy Hirschfield and Ena Shaw, all of whom have extensive backgrounds in their work as psychologists and working with families. We define a family consultant as somebody who has training as a psychologist or a social worker and who has experience working in the family law system with family conflict and with family systems. One of the aspects of the role of a family consultant is that it can sometimes be seen primarily as being about facilitating or chairing a meeting, but it's much broader and deeper than that, which you're going to hear about from Illana, Sandy and Ena today. For me as a collaborative practitioner, a collaborative lawyer, and for many other collaborative lawyers whom I know, the role of the family consultant in helping us to gain an interpretational understanding of our own client's behaviour or personality, that of the other partner and the team members and situations that arise is invaluable. It helps us to stand back from judgment and to be much more compassionate in the work that we do. The family consultants also have a role in managing the team dynamics. They understand family systems and group dynamics in general. I'm not going to say anything further at this stage. I will move now to welcoming our panel. So welcome Ena, Illana and Sandy to this discussion about the role and skills of the family consultants or mental health professionals on our collaborative teams. Ena, I thought I might throw the first question to you, but before I do that, would you like to just let us know a little bit about your background so we can understand the context that you're speaking from?
Oh, thank you, Marguerite. I'm a registered psychologist and I'm a registered family dispute resolution practitioner. And I've been doing this work for well over 30 years now. And part of my role was to train mediators and family dispute resolution practitioners. At one point I could have said quite happily that I would have trained about half the mediators in Australia, but as the population grows, I can't put my name to that fame anymore. Can't claim that, but nevertheless, yes, I have been doing this work and I've been involved in collaboration with MELCA for a number of years now. So that's my background. Thank you.
Thanks, Ena. So my first question to you is to ask whether you could outline for us what you see as the core skills of the family consultant or neutral facilitator on a collaborative team.
Well, I think what is really important is for the family consultant to be able to work with the family in crisis. When the separation occurs, this is a crisis for the family and they need to readjust to a new way of living. So that is important. And the family consultant understands the emotional impact of the separation process and how this affects the individual members of the family. So the family needs to start renegotiating a different family structure from what they had before. The other important relevant part of it is understanding child development and the appropriateness of the arrangements that people make for their children as they negotiate how they will continue to parent, given that they're living separately. Understanding the goal is also, we also need to understand that the goal is not always an agreement. The goal needs to be how this family can work together in a different way. And they need to work towards a cooperative, collaborative way. And that might not have been in the marriage or in the relationship, but that is something that although the spousal relationship has ended, the parental relationship still continues. And the understanding that agreement is not always resolution. One can make an agreement around the pragmatic areas, but not necessarily around resolving what has gone on in the relationship, but understanding what has happened and working with that to assist the parties to make a reasonable and rational plan so that their children can benefit from the wonderful goodies that both the parents can offer.
So it sounds like a lot of the skills that you're talking about is keeping the focus very much on the future and probably conflict management.
Absolutely, because we can't change what's happened in the past, but we can certainly work towards a roadmap for the future.
That's great. Thanks, Ena. Illana, I'll turn to you for the next question. But as with Ena, would you like to let us know a little about your background?
Sure. Marguerite, what attracted me to collaboration in the first place, after many, many years in the family court system, was the multidisciplinary team approach, because it actually attends to all aspects of people's experience, whether it's legal, financial, and an emotional, psychological experiences that people go through as they travel this path. Now, even if there are no mental health issues, the emotional distress and trauma that the individual experiences after separation and divorce cannot be underestimated. It is rated on some scales as high as the loss of a loved one. And we know it's not a singular event. It's not something that happens this week and a week or two and you're over it and off you go. The impact of separation and divorce can go on for a protracted period of time, particularly where there's children involved. So it can be quite extensive.
Your experience in the court system therefore sounds like quite a contrast with the collaborative interdisciplinary approach that we're speaking about. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more about the reasons why you think most collaborative teams should have a mental health professional or a family consultant as part of the team.
Yeah. Even if there are no mental health issues identified, and so no apparent reason to require someone with mental health training, realistically, after people have gone through the emotional turmoil of separation and divorce, when we start to ask them questions about their relationship, about what has transpired, let alone asking people to sit in the room with their ex-partner and then in a large meeting with their ex-partner and their ex-partner's lawyer and financial planners to make decisions about the rest of their lives that are in some way fair to everyone, we're going to start to open up a lot of those emotions again.
Yeah. And
they can be very powerful, and they can actually surprise even the clients themselves, who think they're actually much further down the track than they really are, because we don't actually totally get over some of these strong emotions. They're still there. And when we start to tap into it, people can start to well with expression. And I think a family consultant with mental health training is the best person to help people to identify what's happening for them, to help them to manage themselves and to manage themselves in those meetings in the best possible way so that the collaboration can be as successful as possible. Mm. So we're also best qualified to help people to, as Ena said, to understand the issues for the children and what's in the children's best interests. But there are a lot of other conversations we have, because we know it's not just the two people in the room. They come with many other people around them. So there are the children, and that's an obvious one, the young children. But I've spoken with many couples about their adult children, and how they're going to talk with their adult children about what's happening and explain to them the arrangements. Sometimes adult children can feel quite compelled to try and involve themselves in how issues are managed. And I've spoken with many couples about how to deal with that. There are the new partners in the background. There are family, extended family. How are we going to manage our relationship now in relation to all these people? There are the school. And I've had so many conversations with people about how they're going to manage school activities, attending parent-teacher interviews, attending concerts and extracurricular
So you're
activities.
looking at the whole vast system, really.
That's right.
As well as providing emotional support in the transition that couples are going through.
Because
in the negotiation.
These issues come up. As you start to talk with people about the issues, these things arise. And somebody with mental health background is best able to fully understand the dynamics and the issues involved for the parties in how they negotiate.
That you would describe that as providing a lot of emotional safety for clients. I would feel that as a practitioner involved in teams.
Well, that's right, because if clients start to raise these issues, then you need to be able to deal with them in a timely way so that they can then move on and do what we need to do in the collaboration. You can't just say to someone who's welling with anxiety and emotion about the fact that their relationship with their parents is compromised because of people being torn in their loyalties and the way children are moving around and things like that. You have to deal with it and contain it in a manageable way so that you can move forward and deal with your collaboration. You can't just sort of say, look, you need to hang on to that because you're going to have to deal with that somewhere else and we'll find you a nice psychologist somewhere to do that. People aren't going to be able to manage themselves well if you need to do that.
That's that integration.
That's right.
Speaking about.
Agreed. I'm not sure I actually talked about my qualifications earlier. I think I launched in and I didn't. My qualifications.
Please do that now, Illana.
Yes, as a psychologist. I worked for over 20 years within the court system, actually employed by the family court, and for 10 years as a collaborative practitioner. And I do have family therapy training, as I believe Sandy and Ena do. And I found that my family therapy training was has really informed my understanding of group dynamics, and that certainly that's been a very, very valuable aspect of being a collaborative practitioner.
Thanks, Illana. Sandy, turning to you, and as with Illana and Ena, would you like to just outline some of your background that brought you to collaboration and the skills you bring with you?
Sure, Marguerite, thank you. So basically, I have a strong background as a mediator alongside over 20 years of working as an educational and developmental psychologist in schools. This time also included family therapy studies and later training as a collaborative practitioner. So I've since commenced in private practice for the past 12 years, working mostly with individuals or couples going through separation and supporting them in that process. Over that time, I've taken on the role as family consultant in our interdisciplinary teams. And that's happened for, I was actually trying to think about it, probably about 50 cases to date. And what attracted me to this opportunity was that, having heard the stories of so many children over 20-something years coming into my office in schools and talking about what it feels like when their parents are fighting over time with them, they're about to separate, it really was, it was so shocking and so sad. So the opportunity to get in early with couples who are separating and guide them in a way that their children can thrive during and after their separation was really important to me. So that's my background coming into this world.
Thanks, Sandy. reflecting back on what Illana said about emotional safety and integration of the skills that you bring into the team and for the family, I'm wondering what you think about the difference between somebody with your skills and background and somebody who might have training as an FDR or a mediator, facilitating this process or working as a family consultant. It seems that there are a number of issues that rely on you having a background as a psychologist or social worker, and I'm wondering what areas you think might be difficult to manage without that background.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. So I want to start by reinforcing the point that Illana's made, that separation is normally a stressful and overwhelming time for many individuals. So a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about show up as kind of quite normal in the separation. And it's our background that I believe would help the separating couple. For a start, we all have an intake, and we might see in the intake a couple that we think we can manage quite easily in a collaborative process. But so often unexpected behaviours turn up in the course of a collaboration, and they may not have been present during the intake. Often a client can be very easily triggered by their sense of injustice as they go through the process. And that can create quite high levels of anxiety during joint meetings. So I think being able to understand, recognise and respond appropriately, which we have the training to be able to do, can well support the individual going through the process and the team working with the process. There's also, I found quite often clients will present with, or they are described by their ex as being emotionally dysregulated, a much more intense variation in emotions. So these are the individuals who fire up in a nanosecond. They go from being calm to being quite fiery. And understanding how the brain works, how the fight-flight impulse overtakes rational thought, is so central to containing those responses, both within meetings, but also in coaching individuals who are experiencing that and their partners, and helping the team understand how that can impact on a process. So we have a kind of what I call a psychoeducational role as well in our coaching based on our experience and our training. We're teaching new ways of managing emotions and communicating, and not just for the process, but hopefully for the future of this couple. It's also important for the family consultant to be able to recognise a range of personality disorders and other mental health issues, which Illana has mentioned and Ena's mentioned too. And these could otherwise sabotage a collaborative process. So passing on this information to assist team members in their communication with clients is helpful for all. I also often have to check on medication issues to understand how that might impact a client during meetings. It's similarly important to identify behaviours and communication challenges that might be triggered by autism spectrum disorder, and those need to be accommodated in the process. So having a social science background helps in many ways. Also in understanding the relationship pathology between clients as they approach separation. I offer clients the chance to change their steps. I think you mentioned something about a new way of being, and it's similar to that. So they can change their steps in their old marriage dance, what didn't work, so that they can create a healthier new co-parenting relationship, which is better for them and for their children. It's also interesting to stay alert to the team being drawn possibly into the couple's pathology so that we can disengage from potentially unhelpful behaviours. Typically, a family consultant might need to identify and assist with past power imbalances between the clients to create a more level playing field, and our training and our skill development is invaluable in that regard. We often need to coach clients as well as empowering the more vulnerable client in meetings to mitigate the risk of a power imbalance as they move towards negotiating the things that matter to them. Then there might be issues such as disclosures of an affair or allegations of family violence, which need sensitive skill handling and probably best understood and managed by someone with a social science background. And finally, a facilitator with a social science background would be able to recognise and assist with readiness discrepancies. Often one party, usually the person who has decided to separate, is very ready to move on, and the other might be psychologically well behind them. They may still be in shock, they may be hurt, they may be angry, and there may be a range of emotions that still need to be processed before they can commence with the process. So those are some of the issues where I suspect that clients would receive the greatest benefit in collaboration if the facilitator or the family consultant was well trained and experienced in applying social science methodologies as the clients journey through the challenges of their separation.
Thanks, Sandy. That's a really interesting exploration. And a lot of what you say sounds as though there are therapeutic skills. And I guess that brings us to a question about whether your role as a family consultant, and this is really a question that any of you can respond to, is therapeutic, or how do you distinguish the difference between your role as a family consultant and a therapist, even though you're using your deep skills as a therapist in that role?
I'm going to jump in there and say that I'm very clear that it's not a therapeutic process, that what we're offering is coaching to help them best manage this process, but it's not intended to be a therapeutic intervention. And I will often refer clients out for therapy if I feel that they need that deeper process to help them manage what's happening. But I'm happy to hear Ena and Illana's perspective too.
I would agree with you, Sandy. I see it very clearly as not therapy. There are different things that would describe therapy, and that's not what we're doing, because we're dealing with a number of people and players, and we're moving between different groups, and that wouldn't be part of a therapy necessarily anyway. But we are using our knowledge and our expertise in assessing and doing interventions at a particular level so that you can maintain the integrity of the collaboration and maximise the outcomes of the collaboration. That's the intention, I think.
And I guess that re-emphasises that you are neutral in your role.
Yes, and I'd like to add to that is that a family consultant has the understandings of the dynamics of the relationship and what led this couple to the conflict that they're in now, and how destructive, and understanding how destructive that has been for the couple. And as Sandy has referred to the coaching, to help them and coach them to find new methods and new ways and skills in dealing with each other rather than what they did before. But that is not therapeutic. And there's a different therapeutic contract that people enter into when they go for counselling or psychological services. So as the family consultant, there's always that element of screening and assessing what is happening in the room all the time and what is happening to the parties all the time, and being able to say, you know, at this point, let's have a break, or at this point, what is it that the parties need to be able to be in the best frame of mind to make decisions? Because the worst thing to do is to make a decision when you are emotionally distressed. We don't make good decisions. We only make good decisions when we can think through things clearly and rationally and carefully. And they are the best decisions that people make. So the family consultant is there to hold people and to contain them and to help them through the whole milieu of this emotional turmoil that is happening for them at the moment. And yeah, it's around a process. And sometimes some of the research has shown us very clearly that the effects of a separation, as Illana alluded to earlier, can take 3 to 4 to 5 years, depending on how the separation occurred. So people need the support. They need the legal side, they need the psychological side, they need the financial side, and that's what collaboration brings into the room, is the expertise of all these people. But the family consultant also can support the team when things start getting really hairy or difficult. The family consultant has the skills to hold the team and to work with the team together so that the couple have the best possible outcome for their family.
Yeah. Thanks, Ena. And I'm interested and grateful that all of you have emphasised in different ways the value of the understanding of the couple dynamic, as well as holding and coaching the person to be much more future focused, because I think that's part of the role of a family consultant that we really don't speak a lot about. And I think it's incredibly valuable. Ena, whilst I'm throwing questions, another one to you, and you've spoken already about your background as a mediator and a trainer of mediators and family dispute resolution practitioners. And you've probably already covered off on it to some extent, but I'm wondering how you see the different skills of a family consultant from a mediator or a family dispute resolution practitioner. What's the difference?
Well, family in the family dispute resolution training, it certainly covers some of the areas that we've mentioned, but some of the really deep areas such as containment, or the deeper knowledge of the group dynamic or that of relationships, or being able to recognise some of the things that Sandy spoke about earlier, in terms of personality disorders, in terms of autism, in terms of guiding and assisting parties to understand what it is that they're dealing with. One of the examples, working with families that have autistic children, the effects that has on them and what needs to play out, the effects of family violence, although that is definitely part of family dispute resolution training, the deeper understanding of that and the effect that has on people, and what the effect it has on the victim and the perpetrator. And also then moving on to how that plays out, possibly in post-traumatic stress or in the fight or flight response, or just understanding to be able to deal with people when they are in these moments of disarray where they cannot contain themselves. The other thing is, FDR training doesn't at all talk about working in a team or how you assist in a team, and the team dynamics and group dynamics and what happens in the room, and what needs to happen between the professionals in the room, and how we need to work together, irrespective of what role we take. So there are many, many differences. Having done collaborations and working in the FDR space as well, it's a very different role. And it's clearly defined, as Sandy has outlined, that there's the coaching role, there's the supporting role, there's the deeper understanding of what happens for a family and how best they can renegotiate their new family structure.
So the family consultant, one of the great distinctions is that they're working as part of a team, and their role is much broader and deeper really than facilitation.
Yes,
to contrast it with mediation.
Yeah. Good summary.
Thanks for
I agree.
Ena, a minute ago you touched on the idea of team dynamics. And Illana, I'm wondering if you would care to speak to this, thinking about the role of the family consultant in managing team dynamics on a collaborative team. Again, I think it's something that isn't necessarily spoken a lot about around the world, and I'm not sure that all family consultants or mental health professionals on teams would see this as a significant or an important part of their role. I value it highly, and it's something that I've observed our family consultants doing with great success. So I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about that, Illana.
Yeah. So I think that we've talked a lot about all the different aspects that the family consultant can bring to the team. And I think that informing the team about the clients individually and the dynamic, the dance between them, and how that might play out in the collaboration is extremely valuable, because the collaboration can be shaped and informed by that knowledge, by that deeper knowledge and understanding. And so you don't necessarily fall into pitfalls that you might otherwise do. But I think what you're asking me is about the team dynamic itself. And
Yeah,
I think
the
that
professional team.
the family consultant is best qualified to observe the team dynamics and to be able to intervene if and when needed about how that is playing out. So it's quite easy for the team who thinks they're working extremely well to start to display behaviours that we think, well, maybe we need to address that, you know, so that if there are alliances happening or we feel that something isn't working well in the room, we can bring it back to the team and talk to the team about that. And hopefully the team can come back with a new understanding of how to manage. I think we can do that in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be overtly when the clients are in the room. It can be in our team discussions, and often is, or it can even happen on an individual level. But I think it's very important to have someone who's able to stand back and observe team dynamics, to be able to come back and comment on it. And even as we're trying to improve our collaborative model on a continuous basis so that we can grow and develop from that understanding. I think we have the best training and the best capacity to do that observation and to make those, not necessarily interventions, but to make those comments and to try and help shape the team into maximising its own potential.
And in the model of practice that we're speaking about, you're neutral, there is just one family consultant. So the power of that neutrality, I imagine, is one of the aspects that helps you to manage the team and to stand back and look at it from a systems point of view.
Quite. I think the neutral role is an absolutely vital role in collaboration, because the lawyers meet with their clients, and while they do sit at a table with the other client, it's not the same relationship. And it's very easy for a lawyer to find themselves representing their client in the more traditional way rather than being a collaborative practitioner in the room. It must be incredibly difficult for lawyers to hold that space and not go into that role, because you spend so much time with your individual client, hearing their intimate story without hearing the intimate story of the other.
A great reminder of one of the values that I know that a lot of collaborative lawyers express, which is having the family consultant bring to us some different understanding of personality, situations and behaviours, so that we can stand back from judgment more, which is something that we're inclined to do when we don't know anything about the other person. And I think it increases our ability to be compassionate and creative in the way we support and guide our clients through the collaboration. So again, I think that that's something that's not very often touched on in discussions and training, where your role can sometimes be seen to be mainly about facilitation of meetings, and there's, I think, a lack of recognition of the benefit to the other members of the team of your skills and neutrality. So
I think the modelling that we do around how to be in the room and how to be with each client is very valuable too.
I would absolutely agree with that. So the last question, unless anyone wants to raise anything else that they think is of value, I thought I might direct towards you, Sandy, which is about circumstances where somebody without the depth of your skills might be quite fine to facilitate a meeting or a process. So somebody who's mediator trained, for example, but doesn't have a social science background.
Yeah. And Marguerite, there's definitely situations where the facilitator may not need a social science background. Not possible to guarantee, though, that these cases would go smoothly, but I'm going to generalize and talk about the situations where possibly it can work quite smoothly not to have a social science background. And the things I'm going to mention are not exclusive. There may be other aspects as well where it would work quite smoothly. But what came to mind are attributes where I suspect there's going to be less turmoil for the couples and in the room. And it's when, for example, the separation is mutually agreed upon. So both couples have talked it through. They're quite amicable with each other. They've genuinely discussed issues already related to their separation. And I say genuinely because at times clients will present with almost a solution to their settlement when they arrive. And they say, we've discussed it and we've both agreed. But sometimes there's a more dominant partner, and that's been the pathology of the relationship. They believe it's now all resolved. But what we find in working with the other partner is that they may have had a history of being somewhat submissive to that partner. They may be intimidated, and they may be conflict avoidant. And so they arrive with saying, we've worked it out, when in fact there's still probably a fair bit more work to be done there. But let's say genuinely couples can arrive having worked it through, where they felt both of them quite comfortable and they're ready for a process to take them through all the detail. Where there's no children, or there's adult children, or where there are children involved but they don't have special needs, it may be, you know, quite possible for someone without a social science background to be able to take this couple through their collaborative process. If neither person in that relationship has mental health issues or significant personality disorders, it may also be quite possible for this to go smoothly. One of the important issues is whether there's trust between the couple. So if they arrive with a healthy level of trust between them, and they each have a shared financial literacy about their assets, or even if they don't, if they're quite open to being coached in that area by the other neutral in the interdisciplinary team who can help them reach that level of financial literacy, then that's quite possible that those cases can move smoothly through a collaborative process without the need for that social science background that we all have. But no guarantee, because things often just happen. There's an emotional attachment to those issues that, you know, hadn't seemed apparent to start with. But in general, yes, it's possible that cases can go ahead with a facilitator who doesn't have a background. But I just want to say that from my perspective, I find it an enormous privilege to work with clients in a meaningful way as they face one of their life's biggest challenges, that drawing on my background and significant experience as a psychologist enables me to contribute to the collaborative process beyond what I call a transactional role, so that my approach is about understanding the many facets of the emotional turmoil, the fear, the anxiety that often underpins the arrival of clients embarking on a separation. So I would encourage collaborative practitioners to include a family consultant with training as a psychologist or social worker in their team, so that they can optimize their clients' experience and outcomes from this process.
Thanks, Sandy. I think that's really valuable. One of the things that pops out for me from that is you're speaking about trust and equality. And my experience as a collaborative practitioner is that they're things that tend to emerge sometimes a little bit down the track in cases that I've done, which haven't necessarily been by choice, where there's not been a family consultant. Whereas when there's been a family consultant, we tend to get that much earlier indication that there might be issues there. And much more importantly for me as one of the collaborative lawyers is not only that those issues might exist, but what are we going to do with them?
Yeah.
And conceptualising interventions or support or whatever from the family consultant is immensely valuable to me. And I haven't done many cases where a family consultant hasn't been included, but I think I can say almost invariably when there hasn't been a family consultant, a moment has come, and it usually hasn't disappeared, when I've thought, oh, you know, where is our family consultant? This would be so much better. We'll get through, but the client experience and what we can actually offer would have been so much deeper. And as you say, more meaningful, Sandy, for people. So is there any other comment that any of you would like to make before we draw this to a close?
I'd like to jump in, Marguerite. Thank you. Just to add to what you were just saying there in the collaboration, in the collaborations I've been involved with as the family consultant, even in the room when things start getting a little bit agitated or people start finding that their emotion is no longer, they're not able to sit there in a rational way, that there is that support for those people. And the family consultant in the room can see it coming often much more quickly and readily. And I would say that if there was a family consultant involved in the collaboration moves more smoothly and can be, the whole thing can be drawn to a close more quickly than if you don't have a family consultant in the room. Because if the practitioners are spending time putting out bushfires, as we can call them, or spot fires, then you're not spending time talking about what is important for the couple. What you're doing is spending time containing. So things can move more quickly and more smoothly. Not to say that you might not have a flare-up every now and then, but I think it would be a lot worse if the family consultant is not in the room to assist.
Because of your understanding about what's going on,
yes.
Being able to make that intervention and direct the traffic.
That's
comes
right.
from a place of deep knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for your time participating in this panel. It's been a really useful discussion and highlighted the aspects that I think are so important that family consultants bring. And we always say that every player on a collaborative team is equally important. But I do have a secret soft spot for the family consultants, and I think maybe you are the most important players on the team.
Oh, that's sweet.
But thank you again, each of you.